Hey, welcome to Griff Burns Books. Griff, this is a Moonbeam production. We apologize for the big gap in time since our last video. We had a vacation here at Moonbeam Productions, but I'm here to do a book review and a quick poetry reading for you. The book we're going to review is Slaughterhouse-five from Kurt Vonnegut, and I've finished this amazing piece of literature. It's a novel, but it tells the story of Kurt Vonnegut, who's a World War II veteran and a POW in a German prisoner of war camp, and then is housed in a slaughterhouse in Dresden during the Dresden firebombing. And this novel tells that story in a very untraditional, unstructured way, which I absolutely love. So let's just get down to the nitty-gritty. Kurt Vonnegut, the first chapter is pretty much narration from a narrator who sounds a lot like Kurt Vonnegut, and then the rest of chapters are Billy Pilgrim's story. And let me just say that this book was a pleasure to read. Again, I did read this book in high school a long time ago, and I did not understand it. And now, with some life experiences, including 2 tours to Iraq, which you can read about all in my book, Burned to Babylon, by the way. We'll get to that later, though. I reread this book, and it was a completely different take for myself, and I understood it at a better level. So let's get down to the nitty-gritty of Kurt Vonnegut's writing here. He uses time travel and alien abduction quite a bit in this to jump around all over the place when telling Billy Pilgrim's story about being a prisoner of war in World War II, and then surviving the Dresden firebombing, and then being an optometrist later in life, and having a marriage and a family, and a plane crash, and just other adventurous types things. And so what Kurt Vonnegut does is really, he describes the undescribable in this book. But I had to reread that, and I had to have, just a little bit more saltiness on this old life to get what Kurt Vonnegut was saying. And he uses time traveling and the alien abduction, the Trout Flamorians, kind of as a conduit or a medium to detach the reader. So what I really loved about reading this book is I can just jump into a scenario and be fully involved in that scenario and not detach myself from it. And then Kurt Vonnegut kind of, when he describes the undescribable, he's using that time travel or the alien abduction to detach the reader, in my opinion. And it's done very well if you can ignore the structureless chaos, massacre that it is. So it is commentary on war, and that's where a lot of people get confused, because the war is, in Kurt Vonnegut's opinion, after reading Slaughterhouse-five, senseless, causeless, chaotic. And so that's very much communicated here in this book. Let's jump around here. I'm not going to actually jump around because the book does the jumping around for you. So one point that I liked in the book was a quote that comes up a couple times, where in the book it's, "God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to always tell the difference." I thought that was interesting that Vonnegut put that in there a couple times. And then another point that I liked, and what we'll get to when I read my poetry here, is under morphine, Billy had a dream of giraffes in a garden. So I thought that was interesting that Billy Pilgrim's war experience also included morphine, something I related to as well, because I was given morphine after being wounded. So that's something that just I highlighted. This is another one from the alien abductors here. They know how the universe ends. I thought that was very interesting, and that whole part of the discussion with the Trout Flamorians, I hope I'm saying that right, they tend to be very nihilistic, very stoic. Their concepts of time are very different than ours. And so, to dive into that, Billy Pilgrim is kidnapped by these aliens and then put in a cell with essentially a famous actress, Montana Wildmack, or Womack, or Wildmack. And so and they kind of like do things to Montana and Billy to make them react in a certain way. They have a dome. This book is a lot of fun to read. I'm just gonna be straight up silly with y'all. You can just pick this thing up and start reading and be like, this is nuts and I love it. Or you could be like, this is crazy and what is it? So if you are able to trust the author, so just throw yourself right into that scenario, into whatever they're describing in that sentence, and not try to overthink it and not try to overanalyze the entire message of the whole book, because just trust that the author is gonna bring you back around with that. Yeah, in a way that is unconventional, in a way that takes maybe like, not just faith, but just takes not taking yourself so seriously. And you can do that, then you're gonna love this book. It's an amazing read. I definitely highly suggest picking it up and reading it. I'm sure it's on audiobook. You can listen to it too. I think there's even a movie on Amazon about it, but yeah, I don't know how they would even do that. I also enjoyed here Vonnegut's take kind of on America and Americanism. This is on page 165. America is the wealthiest nation on earth, but its many people are mainly poor, and poor Americans are urged to hate themselves. So like Vonnegut's an outspoken critic of American intervention overseas, and anti-war, not protester, but very anti-war author. How about that? So, but in the same sentence, when he talks about the Dresden firebombing, or Billy Pilgrim talks about it, he still says, you know, things have to be done. They're going to be done, you know, and that's kind of how the alien abductors look at the world, and kind of, I think Vonnegut looks at it as well, stoically and very nihilistically. So at the end of the book, there's a couple here, pieces in here. Yeah, so this is another one. There in the hospital, Billy was having an adventure very common among people without power in a time of war. He was trying to prove to a willfully deaf and blind enemy that he was interesting to hear and see. So more commentary about war from Kurt Vonnegut. And then this this book was really fun for me to read, and I learned a lot about it. One of the messages I think that people gloss over because they want to get real quick to the anti-war stuff is that Kurt Vonnegut's telling you it's okay not to be okay. And where I got that was here at the end of the book, here on page 253. And he's talking about Billy Pilgrim here, and he hadn't cried about anything else in the war. Billy cried very little. And then right here on the next page as well, Billy's talking again. It was all right. Everything is all right, and everybody has to do exactly what he does. I learned that on Trial from Mondoria. And then also, just the lessons of Trial from Mondoria is something I think is interesting. How Kurt tells this story is creative, I believe. It's not chaotic, it's creative how he tells this story. And each time there is an instance where Billy time travels or is abducted, those mediums, those transitions, that transportation should be paid attention to by the reader. Not too much trust the author, but also just watch how the structure is. It's a massacre of structure itself, and it's very well written. I highly suggest picking up the book. There are illustrations in it, not a ton, but they kind of have like little drawings from Vonnegut and stuff like that. So I say pick up the paperback. It's available on Amazon. I know it's on Audible. And we're just keep moving along like a very slow locomotion train that is taking people to Dresden eventually. Not just people, but patriots and prisoners of war. Thank you for your service, not only in World War II, but writing this book, sir. Kurt Vonnegut did an amazing job. So the next book I'm going to burn for y'all is a lot more in my wheelhouse. We're going to go ahead and get the radicalism of the American Revolution, Gordon S. Wood, done. And so this is more contemporary take, This was published in like the 90s. Slaughterhouse-five was published in 1969, and this was published in like the early 90s, and just talking about the American patriots as being radicals. And so stay tuned for that. That'll be my next video. Much more in Griff's wheelhouse, but we'll burn this book for you soon as possible. Also, when I was reading this book, I inspired to read my poem, The Nightmare, from after burning Kurt Vonnegut's book here. So I'm going to read my poem, The Nightmare, to y'all. So first we're going to get the poetry shades on. They're also my beach shades. I wore these on vacation as well on the beach because they're awesome. Yeah, so this is my poem from Burned in Babylon, Robin Griffiths, available on Amazon. Please go check it out. It's the story of my 2 tours in Iraq, being severely wounded, coming home, going to college, being a dad, and being a poet. You know what I'm saying? So this is my poem, The Nightmare. I remember the nightmare. I was laid up, broken from war, comatose and high, dead to a past life, just her and I. She was a corpse. There was a party right above me. All the doctors and nurses were ignoring me. Upside down ideology. I remember the nightmare. There was a staircase from a famous drawing. Right side wrong or something. A place where 3 raps gained no entry. An awkward staircase definitely. Not winding but upside down. Now you see? I remember the nightmare. I cried for help. Screamed for mercy. But the nurses ignored me. They partied like an elitist orgy. They all ignored me. I remember the nightmare. The corpse looked at me and muttered stoically, "They can't hear you. You're dead." This is what awakened me. From my coma and the numbness of death, eternity without mercy, I remember the nightmare. So thank you. That's my poem, The Nightmare, from Burned in Babylon. My book available on Amazon right now. Thank you for all your support. This is Griff Burns Books. This is a Moonbeam production. Everyone be nice and kind to everybody. Go read more poetry right here, Burned in Babylon. Go write more poetry, journal writing, all those good things. If you need help, seek help. And remember, even Kurt Vonnegut told you it's okay not to be okay. All right, later.